But with that said, let's get to the topic of the day. And the topic of the day, I do not think you need me to tell you where we are going to start. It is College Station, Texas, a place that the Era Torres Sports Podcast has spent a lot of proverbial time at over the last couple weeks and months. And it is not good news at Texas A&M. On Monday, we did talk about the fact that Texas A&M lost again in what was a third straight loss. I think it was the third straight loss, fall to 3-4 overall at South Carolina in a game that Texas A&M has historically dominated. So they fall to 3-4. It's completely falling apart. There's injuries. There's this, there's that. You're down to your third string quarterback. Well, on Monday, it did not get very much better because Billy Lucci, Tex Ags, I think he's the best guy covering Texas A&M. Late Monday, he puts out a report that Texas A&M has suspended 3 players from that vaunted freshman 2022 greatest recruiting class in the history of high school football group. The players, 5-star cornerback Denver Harris, 5-star wide receiver Chris Marshall, 4-star offensive lineman PJ Williams. And here's the concerning part. They already got suspended. 2 of them got suspended a few weeks ago prior to the Miami game. If you remember, there was an incident prior to the Miami game, 4 players suspended, 2 of them, Chris Marshall, Denver Harris. So now they are suspended again. These guys indefinitely. What I will say, The Athletic reported it was a locker room situation. You can look up what the rumors are, but it is clear, regardless of if they did what they said they did, that there is a problem at Texas A&M, that there is a major culture issue. And boy, oh boy, it's fallen apart faster than I ever could have imagined. Listen, I'm still in the camp of, I don't think you get rid of Jimbo Fisher right now with that buyout, but it is increasingly looking worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And so let's get into it. Let's talk about it. And really, when I think about the context of this, 3 players suspended, 2 of them a second time, all of them indefinitely for rumors. I'll just say it. They were reportedly, this is all reported, I'm not claiming it as fact, reportedly smoking something in the locker room, which, first of all, to me, you smoke, it happens. It's not illegal in many places. That part I don't care about. But if it happens in the locker room, it is clear there is no respect for your teammates or your coaches. And so when I think about this situation, that's really where I want to start. My first thought, you know what it immediately goes to? It immediately goes to one word that we hear coaches spew about nonstop throughout the season and the preseason, and that word is culture. And it's funny, right? Because every year, SEC Media Days, somebody will put together the spliced up clip of all 14 coaches talking about how great their culture is, and culture's never been better, and this and that and the other thing. But what I will tell you is, like, this is why culture is important, right? Think about the schools that have been successful at the highest levels for the longest amount of time. Alabama, obviously, listen, they have really talented players, but the culture is right. You talk to people that are around that program regularly, they tell you our hardest workers are our best players. Bryce Young, Will Anderson, in the case of this year, those are the guys that we got to worry about the least. They set the tone for the locker room. They keep everybody else in line. And that's something that I have heard for a very, very, very long time being around college sports. The best programs are not coach-led. They are player-led. I'll give you another example. I remember doing a story many years ago on the 2001 Miami Hurricanes national championship team. Ed Reed, Andre Johnson, Vince Wilfork, Willis McGahee, Frank Gore, Phil Buchanan, Antrell Roll, Jeremy Shockey, on and on and on and on and on. And I remember guys telling me the same thing over and over. I interviewed basically all those guys, not all of them, but most of them. And what they told me was point blank. They said, Ed Reed handled the punishment. Like you didn't have to worry about the coaching staff if you did something dumb, because Ed Reed was going to take care of you in the locker room and make sure that he set you straight. There had been other older guys before Ed Reed that set the same tone. Damian Lewis, a big defensive tackle, Edgerrin James. But I bring it up because that program was player-led. Alabama is player-led. Georgia, I would assume, is player-led. Clemson, I know that they're up and down. Are they good this year? But you can't deny that culture is real and culture matters. And I know we make fun of culture, but this is why it's important. And here's what we could say about Texas A&M, or at the very least, Jimbo Fisher. I don't know Jimbo Fisher personally. never been anywhere other than in a press conference with him, never spent any one-on-one time with him. But the one thing I will say about Jimbo Fisher is for years, he has publicly put winning over accountability and over culture. Listen, this isn't my opinion. Just look at facts. Guy wins a national championship in 2014. Just think about everything that happened at Florida State that year, including with his best player, Jameis Winston. I don't know why I said there's Jamison Williams and Jameis Winston. I'm always switching up their names in my head. Jameis Winston, okay? So think about Jameis Winston. Wins the Heisman Trophy, comes back the next year. What does he get caught doing? And by the way, put aside that there was, allegations of sexual assault that many believe were maybe a little bit more questionable than they were originally, whatever. But think about the year after. Jameis Winston, leader of your team, best player, Heisman Trophy winner, national championship quarterback. What does he do? He steals crab legs? That's what we're talking about right now? Oh, by the way, before the biggest game of the year against Clemson, they suspended him for a half because he did something dumb and yelled something dumb in a school cafeteria. So at the time, even at Florida State, people talked about how Jimbo Fisher, he didn't care about culture. It was all about talent. It was all about winning. Nothing else matters. Well, culture, accountability, responsibility, that has to matter somewhere. And again, this is something that's plagued Jimbo Fisher for years, even as he left Florida State. Remember, his last year, they went 5-6 overall. Florida State fans will tell you the culture problems that he left continue to be a problem really until the last year or two where things are finally turning around. Now, I don't know if it's true or not. And what I would say to Jimbo, I've defended Jimbo Fisher. His last year, his starting quarterback got hurt in week 1. They had to play a true freshman the rest of the year. So regardless, it doesn't matter. We don't have to relitigate Florida State. But Jimbo Fisher is always a guy who has let stuff slide for the good of winning. Speaking of which, my second thought on this is why evaluation and player fit is so important in recruiting. Listen, I don't know any of these kids individually, but at the same time, just think about, again, the best coaches, the best coaching staffs. What do they all do? Yes, it's about talent. No, Nick Saban wouldn't win national championships if he didn't have really good players. But what do we always hear in recruiting? What do we always hear? We hear, the best coaches, John Calipari, Nick Saban. It's not just about who you recruit. It's not just about who you offer, but it's who you say no to. It's who you say, you know what, we're good. Or if somebody gets to your school and they're not doing what they're supposed to do, you hold them accountable. I'll give you a perfect example from this season. Nick Saban this offseason took maybe the best player in the transfer portal that wasn't Quinn Ewers or Caleb Williams, was a cornerback named Eli Ricks, transferred from LSU, okay? This was a guy that was projected by Mel Kiper and Todd McShay, at least one of them, as a first-round pick prior to this season. Eli Ricks really didn't see the field until last week when Alabama played Mississippi State. And we don't know why, but it's become pretty clear that he is not living up to the standard that Nick Saban has created. And so, one, it's about player evaluation in recruiting. I'm not going to give these guys a pass. Whatever they did, it must have been pretty dumb for Jimbo Fisher to suspend you indefinitely. And so this is part of recruiting as well. When you prioritize just talent and when you get that talent to campus and don't hold them accountable, bad stuff happens. When you hold them accountable, good stuff happens. Look at Eli Ricks. Like I said, he finally got on the field because he was finally willing to buy into what Nick Saban wanted. Nick Saban in the past has let guys go when they don't. Jaleel Billingsley, we remember him from last year. Ajayi Hall, who's now at Texas, we remember him from last year. And so that is what the great coaches do. It's not just who you recruit, it's who you don't recruit, who you stay away from. Many of you are basketball fans. John Calipari, there's plenty of incidents. I won't name names, but everybody who's a Kentucky fan or follows recruiting knows. There are some high-profile players over the last couple of years. He's just said, no, thanks. That guy won't fit here. He's not going to buy into what we want to do. And again, it comes down to recruiting. It comes down to evaluation. And it can't just be about talent accumulation. It has to be about culture fit, this, that, and getting guys that are the right fit into the program. Finally, what I would say just about the players themselves and this, there is an NIL element to this as well, right? And what I would say, as I always say, I have not accused Texas A&M of anything. As I've said many times, I believe there are logical reasons why Texas A&M signed the number one class in the history of college football. One, there were more scholarships available last year because they reworked the scholarship counts because of the transfer portal. Houston area was historically great. They took advantage of some coaching changes, got some guys from Florida that had previously been committed to Dan Mullen, or LSU under Ed Orgeron, or Oklahoma under Lincoln Riley. And so there were logical reasons why they could sign that elite class that they did. But at the same time, there are NIL rumors, right? We know what they are. And if you believe any of it or even part of it is true, and even if it isn't, you can't deny that that's probably played some role in this as well. One, if the rumors are true, it's just fact. Like, it's just fact that the oldest axiom in college sports is if you're paying for players, if you're breaking the rules, and flat out playing recruits is breaking the rules. This is what Nick Saban was fired up about this summer, whether it's true or not. If you're paying for recruits, that's breaking rules. And if you're paying for recruits, it's just the oldest axiom in college sports. When you pay for guys, it's harder to keep them in line because inherently they're at your place for the wrong reason. They're not at your place because they really want to be there, because it's the best place for them, because it's where they wanted to be, because it's where they want to get a degree from, where they want to play. They're there because of money. And so when you get guys under those circumstances, it makes them harder to coach. It makes them harder to keep accountable. I would also add, they kind of have something over your head, right? Because if somebody is getting paid, and I'm not saying it happened at Texas A&M, but all they got to do is make one phone call, your career is over. So you can't really coach them. You can't really push them. You can't really do this. You can't really do that. So this has been a thing in college sports forever. And if it's true, it's clearly, there's some guys that feel like they are above the program. But beyond that, think about the other. So there was 29 or so signees in that class, something like that, 30. Think about the other guys. I can tell you for a fact, I talked to somebody very close to the Texas A&M program last offseason. You want to know the biggest reason Jimbo Fisher was so fired up that Lane Kiffin and Nick Saban and everybody's making accusations? It wasn't because it's true. It's not true. They owe this money. They can't pay this money, whatever. The truth is they were frustrated because they had 65 other players already in the locker room, 65 sets of parents, not literally, but metaphorically, calling and saying, is all this true? Are all these freshmen getting all this money? Because where's my money? I'm a returning player. I'm a difference maker. I rushed for this many yards. I caught this many passes. I made this many tackles. I had this many tackles for loss. So if it's true, it's hard to hold the players accountable. But even if it isn't true, what I can tell you is it clearly probably created some division in the locker room where maybe a kid does have a legitimate NIL deal, but he's a freshman. Why is he driving that car? Why does he have that piece of clothing? Why is he wearing that chain? Why does he have and so to say that it plays no role in all of this at all, I'm sorry, but I think it does. And oh, by the way, this goes back to the culture thing that we were talking about a minute ago. Now, what I would finally, as we start to wrap this, what's going to be most interesting is what now happens going forward. Okay. What now happens as a result of this? Because I could see this going one of two ways. On the positive side, I could see the scenario where this rallies the troops. Listen, we have all been in circumstances as people at work, in school, in this, in that, where there's one or two bad eggs. And I'm not saying these kids are, I'm just saying where there's just one or two people that are always causing trouble. And then they get removed from a situation and there's just a more harmonious situation in the locker room, in the classroom, whatever, right? I mean, think about sports that you played as a kid. One kid wants too much, wants all the shots, wants this, wants that. Parent pulls him off the team. All of a sudden, the team starts playing better. I can think of a million examples in college basketball, college football, where the right guy transfers out and a team goes on a winning streak. That guy was causing problems. He was causing problems at practice. He was slowing things down. He wanted more. Teammates didn't like him. I don't know if that's the case with these three guys, but I could see the scenario where it rallies everybody else. And I do think that scenario is in play. I saw a couple Texas A&M players really really tweet out support of the program following this news, right? There's people like me, everybody else saying it's absolutely chaotic. And there's a bunch of guys in that locker room tweeting out, we support the Ags. We love the Ags, this, that, the other thing. I could, also see this going the absolute opposite way as well. Because when I look at this situation, you know what this says to me? This is just another check in the box that Jimbo Fisher is not the right head coach for Texas A&M. And I have defended Jimbo Fisher. I have never once said that I think he should be fired. I don't know. I've defended him. He was good 2 years ago. Easily could have had them in the playoffs. Probably should have had them in the playoffs over Notre Dame. And so I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. But listen, you start to build a resume in a good way. You start to build a resume in a bad way. And this resume is going in the wrong direction in a hurry. And I've never been one that believed that they're going to pay the $80 million buyout. We've talked about it many times. But at the same time, here's what I've seen enough of in college sports over the last couple of years to know. You have the team's not performing on the field. You have off the field problems. That's when reporters start digging. That's when loose lips sink ships. That's when boosters start talking. Boosters start getting stuff out. Administrators start getting stuff out because they know Jimbo's not the guy and they got to get him the heck out of there. And so what ends up happening? You have leaks and you have this and you have that. And eventually something comes out that gives Texas A&M the idea that we're going to fire this guy with cause and not pay that $80 million. Listen, I'm a UConn alum. I can tell you, I saw with my own two eyes, UConn just made stuff up to try to get Kevin Ollie out of there. They ended up having to pay him all his money many years later. But it happened at UConn with Kevin Ollie. It's happened across college basketball. Jeremy Pruitt. What broke Jeremy Pruitt? It was great reporting by our buddy Trey Wallace, now at Outkick. Trey Wallace was on the show. He talked about it. He started hearing stuff, and eventually what ends up happening, you put together a story, now Jeremy Pruitt is out. And so you look at the Jimbo Fisher situation, I could see the scenario where Jimbo, stuff starts leaking, problems, all of a sudden, those NIL rumors become NIL truths. And all of a sudden, somebody has a receipt or a bank statement or this or that or the other thing. I'm not saying it happens tomorrow, but these are things that could happen because, again, there's a building resume for Jimbo Fisher that he ain't the guy and this isn't going to work. So it'll be fascinating to see going forward, but this is one to keep your eye on. Final last little thought, by the way, I saw this from somebody, is that this is proof that the NIL market will correct itself, right? If it's true that A&M paid all these players all this money in NIL money, well, this is proof that, you know, you got to be careful what you wish for, careful what you pay for, because it could backfire. That one I don't believe in. And I just want to end on that because I think that's absurd. The one thing I keep saying about NIL, people say, oh, the market will correct itself. No, it won't. No, it won't. Because it's funny, right? I just watched the SMU 30 for 30 probably about 2 weeks ago. I bored on a Friday night, watched the SMU 30 for 30, okay? And in it ends. And I know this was a different era before NIL, but in it, at the end, Brent Musburger has a great line. He says they've been filling up these stadiums for years. They've been keeping score for years. And as long as you keep score, everybody is always going to be looking to get some sort of edge, and I'm paraphrasing here, to push the line. And so if it isn't Texas A&M, it'll be somebody else. If it isn't this school, it's that school that are paying $1 million, whatever the number is, to get those elite players. And I don't believe the market's going to correct itself at all. Now, I do believe over time, you could see more money going to high-profile transfers as opposed to high-profile high school players. But when you have that five-star corner, that five-star edge rusher that can change your program, I don't think the market's going to correct itself at all. One, we haven't seen it with coaching yet, right? We're still paying 20, 30, maybe $80 million in buyout money. But then two, on top of that, you know what it reminds me of? The one and done in college basketball. For years, every single couple years, there's a new coach that thinks they're going to reinvent the wheel with the one and done. John Calipari's been doing it forever, but think about all the other guys that have gotten involved. Penny Hardaway, Will Wade, Juwan Howard, Coach K, Roy Williams for a few years. And what you realize is it's really hard. It's really problematic. There's a lot of baggage that comes with really talented players that are frankly been getting paid under the table. And what ends up happening is after 2 or 3 years, you have a guy like Penny Hardaway. It's like, I'm not recruiting freshmen anymore. They're too much work. It's too much drama. but it's not going to stop the next guy. It's not going to stop the next guy from thinking that he is the one that can get the most out of that 5-star superstar. And I feel the same about NIL. So Jimbo Fisher, Texas A&M, we will see what happens. But you talk about chaos in College Station. It is chaos in College Station. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute. But before we do, I want to welcome back our sponsor, Betfred Sportsbook and the Betfred app. Listen, I've been telling you about Betfred for weeks now. Love working with them and so grateful for our partnership with Betfred. You know the deal. Started in 1967 in the UK, one of the most credible and reputable sports books in the UK, over 1,600 shops there. They have come to the US and made a major splash. Not only are they the presenting sponsor of Aaron Torres Media and all things Aaron Torres Pod and college football betting and all of the things that we are doing, but guess what? They are also the gambling sponsor of the Denver Broncos, the Cincinnati Bengals, the Colorado Rockies. And here's why I love working with them. They do more for their customers than anybody. I've already told you, but we sent a few listeners to the VIP tailgate at the Denver Broncos game a few weeks ago. They have first pitch a Colorado Rockies game. The Betfred Sportsbook Suite in the Betfred Suite at Cincinnati Bengals games is absolutely hopping every single time the Bengals play a home game. I can tell you this, big things planned for the Ohio launch on January 1st. Sports betting becomes legal in Ohio on that day. And oh, by the way, Super Bowl's in Arizona. Just keep an eye out for that. By the way, I should mention one of the things that I love working with them, like I said, nobody does more for their customers than Betfred. And here's the deal. Bet $50 on any game this weekend. This is what they're doing for you. This is how much they love you. Bet $50 on any game. You get $250 in free bets, courtesy of the Betfred Sportsbook. So any game, Ole Miss A&M, Michigan State, whoever you want to bet on, bet 50, get $250, courtesy of Betfred. We love working with them. Ohio State, Penn State, Kentucky, Tennessee, it doesn't matter. Bet 50, get $250, courtesy of Betfred. They are our presenting sponsors. We love working with them and cannot wait to continue that partnership. Really quickly, I also want to thank our other sponsor, Bracket Fanatics, bracketfanatics.com. Bracket Fanatics is, of course, the sponsor of our Aaron Torres Pod NFL Pick'em Challenge. Aaron Torres Pod NFL Pick'em Challenge. If you have not signed up, it is not too late. Go to bracketfanatics.com. Join Bracket. Bracket name is Torres. Do that, and you're automatically entered to win everything. It's free to enter. We're giving away $100 weekly winners. We already have 7 winners so far. I'll name the week 7 winner on Thursday's show. And beyond that, on top of that, we also have a $1,000 season-long cash prize. So go sign up today, bracketfanatics.com, join Bracket, bracket name Torres, Torres, and do that. Free to enter, $100 weekly winners, $1,000 season-long cash prize. And if you're already signed up, by the way, make sure to make your week 8 picks. Thank you again to Bracket Fanatics.